With us, a very together sister, editor-in-chief of Essence Magazine, Marsha Ann Gillespie. A graduate of Lake Forest College in Illinois, she started working for Hollingsworth Publications in 1970. Right. Woo, dramatics. Lights, camera. Don't panic. They just say they don't want to hear me, do they? Too bad I don't remember. I just wrap it on up. Right. This adds an interesting little touch. Fire up, everybody. Start to smelling that funny weed. Funny smelling smoke. In May 1971, Marsha became the editor of a new magazine designed for today's black woman, Essence Magazine. As editor-in-chief of Essence Magazine, with a circulation of 400,000, she is always on the go, but she always has the time to address herself to the concerns of black women. Her column in Essence, Getting Down, says a lot to everyone about life and living. I would like to read an excerpt from the October issue of Getting Down. Each of us at birth begins a journey on life's road, a road which glistens like a river in the sun. That journey, from first breath to last, for those of us who get a chance to go some distance, can be one of total confusion as we are swept along in a current, directionless. Our roads have signs along the way, placed to guide and direct us, to give us choices. Learning to recognize them, then understanding, can smooth our journey, make the rough spots a little easier, and help us avoid those wrong turns. Okay, you're traveling on, feeling good, learning the signs and yourself, savoring each step, yet still dissatisfied, searching for others to share the way with. And so we ask for someone to care, share, be with, vaguely asking, no, praying for another friend, for a friend's love, a lover's love. We open our road to another, yet somehow, sadly, we find ourselves unfulfilled with that someone, so alone, or in anguish and alone, cold and alone, hurt and alone, alone. Looking for a river of love, settling for a trickle here, a drop there. Sometimes never knowing that love, like those signs, can only be seen and appreciated and cherished once we search within and find our own beauty and worth. That the water we seek must first be found within. And now I'd like to present to you Marsha Ann Gillespie.
Thank you. I hope the lights stay on. I mean, that was kind of a prophetic beginning or something. You know, I always find it interesting that at this particular time there's such a thing as a Woman's Week. And I'm always intrigued when someone says to me, oh, yes, and what are you going to talk about? Because I always stand confused. I guess because in an age which tends to be terribly pluralistic and very ethnocentric, more and more I find myself drawn towards humanity. And I can't quite say it's humanity who happens to be woman or humanity that happens to be black, so much as trying to find what I call the good people in this world. Because it seems to me that someplace along the line, I just got very confused about what it was we were supposed to be doing as people. Let me kind of rewrap it. When feminism first started, I was very suspicious because I went to meetings and I listened to voices, and even though so many of the issues that were being raised were valid, my suspicion, which in many ways becomes a black paranoia, which if you haven't been born black in America, it's kind of hard to explain, except that you're always kind of looking over your shoulder and doubting everything, said to me, but wait a minute, how do I know that these women are really serious about what they're saying? Because I had always been a believer in a particular poet's philosophy, and that's Langston Hughes. And there was one poem he used to use a lot, it's called, "And They've Taken My Blues and Gone." And I thought to myself, one minute we were in a struggle for human rights for people who happen to be of other races, and the next minute we're in a struggle for women's rights. And I thought to myself, oh, I wonder what comes next. And of course we moved into gay rights, et cetera, when it seemed to me that all of the splinter groups still hadn't dealt with issue 1 for me to get into issue 2 and 3, and that the solution to 1 would have meant the freedom for all others. Perhaps I'm being naive. Or perhaps it's because, as I heard women discussing women's problems, I remembered the words of Sojourner Truth more than 100 years ago, who had to almost invite herself to a convention of women, one of the first feminist conventions in the United States. And then when she got there, stood up and gave a speech which basically said, "And ain't I a woman? I done reaped and plowed and gathered into barns, and ain't I a woman?" And I heard Betty Friedan rap the speech. She sounded good. But it suddenly hit me that what Sojourner Truth was talking about was not quite the same thing that Betty Friedan was talking about. Why I say that is because we as black women have always been considered female. We've never been considered women. You as white women have always been considered feminine and woman, and you had to get certain other human rights. It might sound like a small thing, but let me see if I can make it a larger thing. To be female and nothing else means that one is asexual. And black women in this country historically were asexual. We were used sexually. We only saw ourselves in sexual terms. That was our bartering ability. But to stand up and just get somebody to open a door for us was close to a miracle, and still often is. There's a pedestal that my friend Gloria Steinem wants to be knocked down off of, or doesn't even want to be a part of, that I have never gotten my big toe on. There is a freedom from doing certain things. For example, the freedom of not working in the home, not being a housewife, that I, my mother, my grandmother, her mother, and our mothers on too, have never even had the choice to be in a household as a quote-unquote housewife, keeper of the domain. We have historically never been people to raise our own children. We raised others. If you find a black woman today in the home, she is in the home because she is basically locked in there, not because her husband is working, but because there is no husband because of things we could get into about society. And that home has become another kind of fortress for her. And when she might want to get out, there is no one to keep her children, because we have been the keepers of the children. So I say to myself, what is this liberation? When we, in many ways, can start off down one road, and yet we diverge. When people said to me, we must have equal money for our work, I was right on it, because being a worker, being a child of women who were workers, being a child of women who were always underpaid workers, I am for some money. But the other part of it became when I heard people saying, I must get out into the world of work and do something meaningful, I began to say, but wait a minute. It's nice to be able to make the choice, but what about those who got to work because we have to, because we have no choices, because we have to pay the rent? And that comes due once a month. And I thought, besides that fact, where are all of these jobs, this meaningful work that people are now talking that they want going to come from? Well, that was in the 60s when people kept saying things to me like, oh, Marcia, don't be silly. Jobs are just out there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. but I had always been looking at things like what was the rate of unemployment for blacks in America. And I looked at the fact that black women in America have been, contrary to a lot of popular opinion, and still are, the least paid workers in this country. We earn less than all the rest of y'all do. We have earned less than all the rest of you do. And women's lib aside, we're still going to earn less. Because we're looking at the fact that this economy right now is shrinking. You all are going to be coming out of college, and you're going to have trouble finding jobs. And like it or not, the way this system works is God bless the child who's got his own. Which means that, quite frankly, jobs are not going to be made available for me because I happen to be black and a woman. They are not going to fire a white man for me because y'all wouldn't like it. See, because that's eating into your income. They're not going to fire a white woman for me. So where does that leave me? Down here on the ground. Down here on the ground. And then to make the whole thing even more complicated, we are faced with a litany that says, black woman, if you get a job, you are taking a job away from a black man. Double jeopardy, double threat to be black and female in America. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. See? Because still, okay, you don't take that job and you still have to pay your rent. You do take that job and someone's saying to you, my goodness gracious, girl, you were really doing us in. I stand here today and I almost feel that at times we as black women are about to become phased out people. Okay? I say we're about to become phased out because, lots of reasons, come to think of it. Where do I even begin? We're about to be phased out because we never were considered quote-unquote women, something to be cherished, something to be protected, something to be taken very careful care of. Okay? Something that is not long cherished is not much wanted. America teaches us that it's the things that you got to work hard for, the things that you lock up, the things that you take out and say, look at what I got. That's what everybody wants. But things that we take for granted, whether it be the air or the water, we certainly do mess around with. Now, everyone has been made very aware that the air has been messed around with. Everyone has been made very aware that the water has been messed around with. Suddenly it hit me, well, darling, you are about to become an ecological wonder because you have been messed around with for 400 plus years. Okay, phased out. Phased out because there really are, even today, when everyone is so image conscious, there are still very few positive images of black women that you can find in America. If you turn on your television set today, what you basically are seeing is a rerun of the sort of thing that they showed in films in 1930 and 1940 about blacks in period and black women in particular. And the thing that bothers me so much is because America is nostalgia hungry. In New York City, everybody traipses around in their 30s clothes and their 40s shoes and their, I don't know, 1922 this and their Art Deco that. And, you know, we have a black group who sounds like the Andrews Sisters, and everybody thinks it's very campy. Okay. But there's something very suspicious about nostalgia at a time when we got to face up to some very hard questions about what this country is going to be, how we are going to live, that everybody suddenly is looking over their shoulders at the past. And implied in that is that somehow or the other, 1930 and 1940 were somehow or the other the good old days. Okay? Well, 1930 and 1940 were not the good old days for me. There were some pretty awful days. And so when I look at this nostalgia, I say to myself, what does this mean to me? And I become paranoid. Because what it means to me is there's something about the future that we as blacks don't even want to look at, and you as whites definitely don't want to deal with. Because the future means making some cold choices about some of the unbelievable crap we are living in. And there's something else too. When I see people talking about nostalgia, I always begin to wonder, when will be the time when white America will turn around and start saying, you know, I really did like those colored folks way back then. See? Because way back then, they were kind of quiet. Or if they weren't quiet, I didn't have to see them. And if I did see them, they were coming into my house to clean. Yeah, I am suspicious. I am very suspicious. I am suspicious because I never felt we made any commitment to the thing of civil rights, and 1974 certainly does prove that to be true. I am suspicious because when you can open up a newspaper and you can see what's happening in Boston in the seat of liberty on the eve of our bicentennial, you know something isn't right. I am suspicious because in traveling around on college campuses, I find, I don't know where your heads are at. I read these articles and they say, oh, they're going back to the 50s and all they're interested is just getting a job. Well, you're just copping out. See, I came in that generation where we were in the streets. Maybe we didn't change a thing, but at least we were trying. Everybody these days seems to be sitting and being cool and digging on some nostalgia. Then I turn around and I look at black folks in the boys in their high heel shoes tipping down the streets, and the ladies basically evil all the time. And I sit and I ask, well, what's happening with you all? And the first thing I begin to hear is whitey this and whitey that and babop, and everybody's got another name for y'all. See, I talk about everything. I'm the worst, you see. I just bring it all out. And everybody's got a bad rap because some brother over there is digging on that lady over there with blonde hair, and ain't that a shame? Because what's he doing? Meanwhile, black women just be getting bitterer. And then, to make matters worse, I hear everybody's got these big opinions about what white folks are, and I'm sure it goes vice versa, because the man I sat next to on the plane, he must have thought I was crazy, because he was giving me a whole thing about what black folks are. And I know, and you know, that you all don't even talk to each other. And so I've been wondering, what are you all so scared of? See, I can't quite decide in 1974 who's more scared of whom, whether we is more scared of you or you's more scared of me. I think it's about a tie. I think it's about a tie. And in this fear and paranoia, all we are doing is going back into the past. Keep pushing back. Keep pushing back. I don't understand why it is that since you all have this 4 years of time, because that's what it really is, time, you don't have to worry about the rent, because mama's paying it. You really, all you got to do is do some studying, and you can maybe moan over the fact that you didn't have a date Saturday night, but you got some time. That in this vacuum called a university, and all universities and colleges do become a vacuum, here you are compressed together, you spend so much time staring at each other through glasses that you have been almost historically wearing since day one, and very little time really examining the psyche of the one we might call the oppressor or that you might call the oppressed. And because we spend so little time about it, we are not being about the business of people. See, because it hit me, I guess one day during the whole ecological turmoil, I was reading all of these things, that if the water goes and the air goes and the wet goes and the blap goes, it's not going to be that black folks going to get over because we can breathe the air when you can't, and white folks live over here because you can drink the water and we can't. When this place goes, we all go. And if there is a second coming, I don't think I'll be around for it, and I don't think I'd want to see it. So this is the time when we must start to move and start to build. It's a time when I'm always saying, like to my editors, we have to stop bullying each other and give up some fear. I gave up fear when I said, even though I see all of these things about liberation, I am a feminist. I am a feminist in the Sojourner Truth sense of being a feminist. I have looked at my realities and I have figured out certain things. That if I don't have any money, I'm not very happy. That I need a job. that my need for a job is based on certain realities, that the only other choices I would have is being on welfare, and I would not like that. Therefore, I must push for equal work for women. And I have to become a feminist to make sure that black women get their share of the pie. I sure do. You see. Because otherwise, I could look around and see more black women out of work, more black women up against the walls, more black women committing suicide than the numbers that are. And in the name of the revolution does not make it any better. Okay? Because it also hit me sometime about mid-60s when everyone was talking revolution, 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 and are you relevant, and da-dap, and ma-boom, that it got to be more fun people talking revolution than anybody doing anything that seemed to be any real change of even mind, much less condition. And like that very famous thing, the revolution will not be televised, it also hit me that the revolution, if one comes in America, is not going to be about race, not race alone. The revolution will be about have-nots and haves, and there'll be poor white folks in this country too. And it also hit me that with all of my Black Power slogans, I could end up against the wall and could be another black person holding a gun saying, well, you got to go too, sweetie. See? Because one of the things that we as blacks have to do, and you as whites have to do, is really look at what's going on in this country. We are moving towards fascism. We have been on a course towards fascism for a long time. And meanwhile, whether I wear my dashiki isn't going to make it any better. It's no more palatable. And I've heard blacks who say, I can't vote, I don't believe in the system, and I've heard whites say they don't vote, they don't believe in the system, and then turn around and be surprised with what happens or what you read about in the newspapers. This is one of the scariest times imaginable. Because repression of this sort, they are not going to spend time deciding, oh, we're going to get rid of black folks. Basically, we don't exist anyway. They are going to make up their minds to get rid of people who are going to in any way challenge what's going down. Richard Nixon's enemies list wasn't about black folks. Richard Nixon's enemies list was about people who were challenging him in his march to become a minor dictator. And meanwhile, we sit still caught up in who's a honky and who's a nigger. Okay? It's not going to make a bit of difference. It's not going to make a bit of difference. While we sit talking about that, the whole shape of all of our lives is being planned. One of my friends was rapping to me about how the Rand Corporation has plans about, 2030? What things are going to be like in the year 2030. That's your lifetime. That's my lifetime. And if the issue of racism, which will be here, it is not going to be as endemic about whether or not you're going to be able to read the books you like to read. Whether or not they're going to be books that you can just go and pick out, or whether you are going to be told, this is what you can read, and only this. You know. And so I sit in 1974 and I see that people just don't seem to be caring anymore about what is really happening to them. It's like I just finished writing an editorial and I said, here I sit and I was watching television and I was watching all the new black shows, which everybody tells me is a real breakthrough, seeing black shows. You know, I never cared whether I saw black folks on television. I mean, I didn't feel deprived, truthfully. I saw me in the mirror. I knew I existed. Sure did, every day I looked at myself. But when I turned on television to see these black shows, I thought to myself, how can these shows be? Where are the black people who were so busily saying Amos and Andy cannot run? Where are the white people who said they were even offended by Amos and Andy? I watched a show, what's it called? That's My Mama. Yeah, That's My Mama. I saw that show and I thought, oh, wait now. this doesn't make any sense here. And then I thought, yes, it makes perfect sense. Because what it is telling black men is that black women are castrating bitches. That mama will keep you tied to her apron strings as long as you live. And we turn on Channel 7. And then if you turn on Sanford and Son, you get to see Sapphire's mama in drag, because that's what really Fred Sanford is about, see. And again you get told that young black men are boys, incapable of thinking, incapable of doing. And then if you turn on, what's that other one? Oh, Good Times, yeah. That's the one where you find out that black men liberate things, that we all steal, and she keeps rolling her eyes at a white Jesus. Nostalgia time. Nostalgia time. But then when I turn on the white shows, I see y'all ain't doing no better. You know. So I said to myself, okay, what are they feeding us? And all we turn and look at are negative images. Negative images. All of us, white folks, you get fed it. Negative self-images. They got more dippy-headed broads on with long blonde hair, you know, and whatever, not making any sense. And then we've got them big, awful women staring us in the face, not making any sense. But nobody says anything. We turn on that television set and we ingest it daily. I've heard some people who, you know, they can't wait to race home to get to their favorite television show. Ask people if they look at a news program and they look at you like you're crazy. So I say that basically we are all kissing our enemies' asses, God's too. Okay? Black people, even though we talk about how much freedom means, white people, even though you talk about how much freedom means, or costs, or whatever you want to do it, no one ever bothers to say, what is freedom? So they've got you on a treadmill trying to keep what little you've got, which is really nothing, and they've got us on this treadmill trying to snatch what you got, which really is nothing, telling us all that that's freedom. Making us all feel like we are really doing it. Okay, ain't nobody free in this country. The freest man probably is Nelson Rockefeller. Ain't nobody free in this country. And nobody gonna get free in this country until we start using our minds, you know, and thinking about things. And when I say thinking about things, let us try to step out of your particular racial skin and your sex skin and really start thinking about how does it feel when you get up in the morning and you open the newspaper and you read the latest headline and move from there. How does it feel knowing that basically you are a generation that we are writing about as being illiterate? Can't read, can't write, and can't hardly spell. Yeah. You are, you know, it's incredible because I get letters in my office every day from college students. And I have come to the conclusion that either I've changed or you've changed or you think I'm crazy and I've talked to other editors, Glamour and Mademoiselle, to see if y'all be as bad as the letters I'm getting, and the answer was yes. Some of the laziest people I've ever seen. You will write to an editor asking them to do your research for you, as if you paid me. You will write letters in which, after the first sentence, it's not even spelled correctly. Verbs and nouns and adjectives have to work together. You know? And then to top it off, when I get to the bottom of the letter, I see that you're asking for a job. You know, because you want to be an editor or a writer. Well, I don't know what happened, but I think that each one of us is, or maybe each one of you is really under some sort of a misguided thing. And that is that, A, people are going to owe you something because you spent 4 years here. Nobody owes you nothing. Nobody owes you nothing. Part of the problem is, basically, I think we were all, in some ways, given a little bit too much of things and not enough of substance. because it's hitting me more and more listening to students that y'all barely think. You barely spend any time thinking about an issue before you have jumped in with your opinion on the issue. Instant scholarship. I have heard black women tell me, I can't be for no women's lib, blah, 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 blah. What's it about? What is women's lib about? Silence. If you don't know what it's about, you can't know that you're not for it. I have heard black people tell me that white folks be like this and they be like that and they do this and then they act that way. How many white folks you know? Well, I've seen them. And when I turn around and say, some people act funny, that if you get your head knocked in the street, it does not matter what color the hand is knocking your head in. You want to kill them when you wake up, if you wake up. The fact that violence in this country has reached epidemic proportions. These are things we've got to be concerned about. The fact that right now, one of the number one crime in America is rape is something that we have got to be concerned about. The fact that when black women tell me they're not for women's liberation and then look at me aghast when I say, my dear, you better be for something because we got to get these rape laws together. They look at me like I'm crazy. Who is the number one victim of rape in the United States today? Can anybody tell me? Nobody can tell me? Black women. Black women. And ain't I a woman too? Here we stand here and we're looking at each other and we are the number one victims, and yet when I go to rape speakouts, I don't see black women's faces there. When I go to meetings about changing legislation, I don't see black women's faces there. But I see white women's faces. Then, when the law goes down, I hear black women saying, but that's not the way it should have been. Well, if you don't like it, you should have participated in the process that made it. We have got to stop copping out. We have got to stop copping out. We have got to take some responsibility for our lives and what happens to them. So in part, I want to end up on something that came out of my dinner this evening. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah. And that is, white women are not our problem. Right now, the whole problem in terms of what's going to happen to us is us. We have got to make some decisions. Do we want to be white folks in black skin, or do we want to be black folks? And if we want to be black folks, what does that mean? How does it work? How does it feel? We have got to stop defining in negativity. Blacks are, it became, I am whatever you aren't. We dealt in the kinds of generalities that, because they are so general, become instantaneously dangerous, which was, white folks are dishonest, i.e. black folks are honest. White folks are treacherous, i.e. black folks are loyal. It doesn't work. So I am always saying to people when I come into universities like this, which are about reality, where you will have a small number of black students in a large sea of white students who cling to themselves as if for dear life. Dig on it. 17,000, is that it, students? 17,000? Whatever? I don't know. 20,000, whatever, how many thousand, is what reality is all about. We are outnumbered in this country. We have been outnumbered in this country. They will keep us outnumbered in this country, but this country is not the world. But if you have decided to live in this country or to spend these 4 years in this country, dig on the folks. Stop being so scared. This don't come off. A. And if it means that your principles about what you believe you are about are in such jeopardy, better find out now than later, because when you get out on the streets, it is even colder. See? So I am a person who, I don't espouse integration. I don't espouse none of that stuff because I don't know what it means. But I do espouse coming into some contact with people who happen to be different than you, because that's what this world is made out of. And stop being, all of you, so ethnocentric, because America, contrary to popular opinion, is not the world. See? And all of you all should be trying to make friends with probably the 2 Chinese you got on this campus. See? And dealing with the fact that history has already shown you the pendulum is swinging. And it's not swinging to Mississippi. Okay? So that means start touching people, because this world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and your children's children's children might end up speaking Chinese. See? And then come to the conclusion that, like it or not, we are all Americans. And if you ever want to feel it, that I'm kidding you, just put your foot outside to another country. The first thing you find out is how much you miss things like instant ice cubes. And if we come to some recognition of the fact that this happens to be the hellhole we are all caught in, then start looking at the rest of the people who are caught in the pit with you. You don't have to marry white folks. You don't have to love white folks, and y'all don't have to love me. See? But what you got to do is open yourself to the contact and even perhaps learn a few things from them. And then in the meantime, for each and every one of us, we have all got to learn how to love ourselves. And that takes the greatest amount of work. It is very easy to say, I do not like someone else. It is not as easy to start to really say and believe and act in a manner that says, I like myself. I'm always telling folks, try staring yourself in the eye in the morning when you be brushing your teeth instead of looking all over, except, usually we be concentrating on looking at our teeth. Look yourself in the eye. See if you can. See if it feels good. And then think about what are the basic things that make you feel good, and then try to show them to somebody else. Because lately, I just have the feeling we are all walking around with some huge poles up our rear end. And it's called fear. And the greatest fear is based on the fact of how we see ourselves and how we feel about ourselves. So let us, if you feel in the mood, I'm not saying go up and hug somebody you've never hugged before. I'm not going to say shake a hand, make a friend, because that's nonsense. But maybe, just once, turn around to that person who's sitting in the class and say, did you dig what he was saying? I couldn't figure it out myself. Try some conversation. You'd be surprised how many similar things you might have in common. Because the differences that we usually want to see as differences are really very small. And then maybe we can get down to the fact of, I like you because I like you because you treat me right. See, because I have come to the whole thing of, I am not for this, universal acclaim of brother and sister and stuff, because it sounds incestuous, see? And I don't make love to my brother, and I don't have, no, I'm sorry, I don't. I mean, didn't bring me up that way. But past that point, it's also a way to lock other people out. So I'm going to end up with what I started out with. The good people in this world will be members of my family. And good people are the ones that I usually go through a certain list with. I can trust my money with, that's the name. I can trust my man with, that's a definite B. I can trust me with, my feelings. I can let down this mask that we all learn to wear and let me come out. I can tell him something and don't have to worry about how it comes back. That's the trust. That's my thing about good people. And then the other part is, are they people who sit on their asses or get up on their feet and do something? Because I don't have time for people who sit around and moan. Thank you very much.
I think we'll break for a few minutes for those people who would like to leave, and then we'll have time for a few questions before we adjourn to the Black Cultural Center, where there will be a reception. So we'll have a few minutes before we start questions.